For a lot of people who think like this, like, oh my god, Bernie sold out, he's a cuck, Bernie sold out. A lot of people that think like that, I would be willing to bet money, probably got interested in politics and leftist politics as a result of Bernie Sanders' 2016 run for the Democratic primary. Many of them. I have many such cases. I have seen this happen. Now, obviously, it's fine. Like, if you get turned on to leftist politics because of Bernie Sanders, a social democrat, it's fine to, like, outgrow that and move further to the left, closer to maybe Bernie's actual ideological positions. But to pretend that you don't understand the level of impact that Bernie Sanders has had is just naive. Like, you're lying to yourself. Am I allowed to ask political questions? No. I hate politics. I'm apolitical.
Folks, my name is Adam, and I like to make tiny, nerdy things. And I really wanted to make
content warning. As the name suggests, this is a Canadian. Many people have been saying that Canadians don't exist. As it would turn out, we have been lied to. Apparently they do. Be careful. Not for the faint of heart.
And deep, deep down, I realized that what I truly, truly wanted to make was a middle-aged Italian plumber.
True!
I always liked the idea of making realistic versions of existing characters, and I thought maybe a semi-realistic
Which is a fucking pogger's idea. Like, I can understand wanting to make the original article as close to the original as you can, right? Like, that's a kind of realism in its own end. Like, trying to make it as close to the actual source material as possible. Obviously, you should learn how to draw the shit as it exists, or how to create the shit as it exists. But I also think it's very cool, and in fact more interesting, to stylize what you're trying to make the thing that already exists.
I want him to retain his bipedal, overly muscular upper body, so I'm gonna lean into the ridiculously large muscles. Once I've got most of the muscle built up and roughly...
This is your average conure sub, true. The average conure sub has a meatier ass, but you know, what can you do?
And I'm ready to really make this Bowser obscenely buff. We're talking bulging biceps, terrifying triceps, boulder shoulders, tree trunks for legs, and you get the point. Basically, he's gonna be jacked.
And how did Ron Paul do in that election? Familiarize yourself with first past the post. It's the voting system that this country uses that makes third-party runs mathematically non-viable. So unless you want to diminish the least bad options' chances of winning, you don't run as a third party because it's a waste of your own time, money, and resources. I talk about this a lot on stream. I'll just be repeating myself.
And then once I've cut out all the individual muscles, I'll gently blend them all together.
That's the idea, Fiorel.
With a more realistic looking, albeit
you try to get a proportional voting system at the local level, then hopefully statewide, and then hopefully you collect enough states that are using ranked choice voting for the federal election, the general election for president, and hopefully you have a good argument to be made, and you have people in seats of power, which would be the Democrats, would be the most likely party to be in favor of instituting a nationwide move away from first past the post. And you get it that way. Of course, it's difficult, but how is there a least bad option? Bombing children is inexcusable? Well, yeah, it's inexcusable, but what are you going to do about it? If we're talking about electoralism, which we currently are, what are you going to do about it? Donald Trump increased our drone strikes by like 400%, and Brandon has not been as bad with the drone strikes. I genuinely believe we should revolt against the government. Yeah, sure, that's a fine thing to believe, but it doesn't seem like the material conditions are there yet to support that kind of a thing. Like, the mutual aid networks in this country would not be able to support people not going to work, and the amount of civil unrest and the difficulties people would have living their day-to-day lives and getting the goods and services and the fucking medication that they need when the supply chain inevitably gets fucking rolled by the fact that there's civil unrest and the citizens are revolting. You have to do a lot of work before that happens. And until then, all you can do is make sure the least bad option is in power.
Poking tiny indents into the clay.
Yeah, this person's trolling.
It should allow me to apply textures to a smooth surface without any obvious seams. And with the body mostly finished, though, it's time to make his head. I'll start with a solid block and then work my way towards...
Why should I work with child... Well, I don't see you getting anything done, so... It seems like you're gonna have to at some point, or else you're just gonna be the troll that you are. I'm glad we don't have to take people like this seriously. Thank God. They have no institutional power, and they never will, so it doesn't really matter. They're just talking shit in chat. The difficulty is that people of this mindset do actually, like, infiltrate and push their retarded ideology to, like, other leftist groups and, like, infect them with their really, really bad ideas. So that's unfortunate. It's almost like there's a specific reason why some people might want more people to abstain from voting for the least bad option while trying to build the community networks and organization that would help facilitate an overthrow of the government and move toward a socialist state. Do you know which party being in power makes it harder to do that community organizing, to do that mutual aid, to do that organizing of the workplace? Both of them. But you know who makes it even harder? The Republicans. You know who makes it not as hard? The Democrats. So we go for the one that is not the worst. They're both bad, but we go for the one that's not the worst. Because whether you like it or not, electoralism exists. And until we can develop the material conditions of this country to the point where we can move past the current organization of the economy, we're going to have to engage with it. And if we don't, historically, voter turnout being lower means Republicans are more likely to win, which just causes more people to get hurt. Neither will do it anyways. Yeah, that's why we take over the Democratic Party, which would be the most likely scenario, which is obviously going to be really difficult. Or ideally, we move away from the first past the post system to a proportional voting system like ranked choice voting or whatever else, which, like I've said, the Democrat Party is the most likely party to be able to do that. You shouldn't compromise with blatant evil. It makes you just as bad. Sure thing, man.
I'm trying to keep a balance between Bowser's immediately recognizable facial features while still allowing room for a more realistic style. Fortunately, Bowser has some pretty big identifiers, like his fiery red eyebrows and his bulbous nose/upper lip area.
It's fun convo at least, but nobody should take it seriously here. We should all understand that it's a meme.
Once I've got the head mostly finished, I can attach it to the body before adding the finishing touches. The neck gets blended into the body, and then I can add a little bit of texture via my roller and clay shapers. Now, is it just me?
Well, yeah, a hostile...
Piece of dog shit.
Exactly, that ideology of this guy we're talking to. True. The hostile takeover of the Democrat Party, I believe, is a necessary thing that we're going to have to do in order to move them away from being the absolute dog shit party they are to a less dog shit party. That just seems to be the writing on the wall. Well, he's not the libertarian I want him to be. He's not evil. And what power does he have? In what way has he positively moved this world toward his worldview? What material consequence has Ron Paul, by your definition, being not evil, improved the lives materially of literally anybody in this country, much less the world? Because that's all I care about. At the end of the day, that's all I give a shit about. Neither has Bernie, but at least Ron Paul is a man and not a cuck. Bernie has increased the levels of class consciousness in this country, the United States, and even the world over, massively so, by his running for the Democratic nomination. Massively so. So what's really funny, chat, I don't know about this one specifically, but for a lot of people who think like this, like, oh my god, Bernie sold out, he's a cuck, Bernie sold out. A lot of people that think like that, I would be willing to bet money, probably got interested in politics and leftist politics as a result of Bernie Sanders' 2016 run for the Democratic primary. Many of them. I have many such cases. I have seen this happen. It's very funny. Now, obviously, it's fine. Like, if you get turned on to leftist politics because of Bernie Sanders, a social democrat, a fucking capitalist, theoretically, I mean, people speculate he probably is, like, a socialist in his own, like, personal ideology, but at least for his policies, he's a social democrat, which is a capitalist. But it's fine to, like, outgrow that and move further to the left, closer to maybe Bernie's actual ideological positions. But to pretend that you don't understand the level of impact that Bernie Sanders has had is just naive. Like, you're lying to yourself. When it comes to the moving of a variety of people in this country further to the left, Bernie Sanders has had a massive impact. Well, the reason why people don't like Bernie is because he's pragmatic. People like this don't like Bernie because he tries to help as many people as possible in the ways that he can, which entails compromising and not being able to have the complete solution to the issue, right? That's why they don't like him. Because since a lot of these people got interested in politics to begin with because of Bernie, 2016 was like the first presidential election that they paid attention to. And then when their guy, Bernie, lost, they completely, like, got disaffected. Their theory of politics at the time was literally only through electoralism, though luckily, ideally, a lot of them have moved past electoralism, understanding it to be the bare minimum civic engagement, like I always say, and moved on to learning more and more about how to do that mutual aid, that building of dual power, community networks, and, you know, the alternatives to the supply chain through the state and yada, 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 that are necessary for leftist action in this country. Ideally, they've moved more toward that. But because of that, they're like, oh my god, electoralism can never work because Bernie Sanders didn't win. And a lot of these people think that, oh, if Bernie did win, he would have instituted socialism in America, which would not have happened. He would have ruled at best He would have ruled. He would have, his presidency, his administration, at best, would have been like a center-left or left-wing Democrat. Like, he's a social democrat, but I don't think his administration would have been a social democratic one. It would have been incredibly difficult for him to do that. Now, ideally, that would be the case, but he was not going to install socialism, and a lot of people got mad that he lost because they thought he would, and now they completely have become disaffected with electoralism. His cucking didn't even help Hillary win? The fuck are you talking about, man? There was a variety of factors that led to Hillary losing. Bernie Sanders was a very small element of Hillary's overall performance in both the primary and the general. Anyway, I'm bored and I want to continue this video. Just no chat. If anybody comes to you and is like, oh my god, Bernie's a cuck, electoralism is useless, we should vote for third parties or whatever, they're fucking lying to your face, and they're trying to dupe you into operating against your own best interests. Electoralism is fucked. But unfortunately, it exists, and the system of electoralism justifies itself whether you engage with it or not. So, if it is not difficult for you to vote, overwhelmingly so, because of gerrymandering, because of voter suppression, because you don't have a lot of time to take off work, etc., 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 you should vote for the best option in the Democratic primary, and then the least bad option in the general, which is always the Democrats. It's always preferable to have a Democrat in a seat of power rather than a Republican. And then after that, every other 365 days of the fucking year that an election doesn't fall on, you should be working to grow organized communities within your workplace, within your community, within your, your local friend group even, and try to do all this other shit in the extra electoral framework in order to hopefully at some point facilitate change through that, because electoralism will never be enough. You should live outside the system and try to starve the system. The system justifies itself as well. Yes, let me live outside the system and go live in a cabin in the woods. And then when the police come to my door and be like, yo, you don't have a deed to this land, you can't live here, and then they kick me out and now I'm homeless, I'll really stick it to the man then. If you live in a fucking society, if you live in a country, by default, everything you do is in relation to that country because they have the monopoly of violence, because they have the ultimate authority. Everything we do in regards to setting up alternatives to the supply chains, just in case they break down, you could do harm reduction by, helping out your local community through that mutual aid and building of dual power that you've been doing, still engages with the broader system that is the state, because everything you're doing involves the state when it comes to procuring those goods, when it comes to using the infrastructure available to transport those goods, etc. Like, you can't escape it. I'm sorry. You can't live in this fantastical world where, oh my god, we can live outside the system. Bruh, go find a fucking island somewhere and try to take that. You probably won't be able to, because chances are a nation state probably owns it and you'll get fucked up. We can tell you don't have an official job because you're in here talking all this bullshit. I'm bored, and I will not be able to stop myself from engaging with your lunacy. So I'm going to let you come back next stream if you want, but I am incredibly bored right now. So thank you for the entertainment for a few, but we got to move on. We got to get through this video. I will say, as someone whose first presidential election I got to vote in was 2008, Bernie losing was a big reveal to a lot of the youth, just how corrupt the establishment Democrats are and how hard they want to force their preferred candidate, just as a matter of disillusionment. Well, yeah, which should not throw you into doomerism, but rather galvanize people to try to do that hostile takeover of the Democratic Party, as well as do the extra electoral organizing to do the harm reduction when the Democrats fail, when the system fails. In the current context of the United States, when people say harm reduction doesn't exist, one, they're fucking wrong blatantly. Like, outright, 100%. However, when they say that, they mean like, oh, electoralism and the harm reduction as it pertains to electoralism, that doesn't exist. That's not true either. However, harm reduction in general does very much exist, and the harm reduction that they advocate for, even though they don't call it that, is mutual aid, is the building of dual power, is the building of alternatives to the supply chain when shit goes south. You're doing harm reduction because all of that shit that you're doing, all of that community organizing that you're doing is making up for, is stopping the bleeding of the inadequacies or outright damages done to communities by the state. That's literally harm reduction. There's no reason why harm reduction through the electoral system can't also apply. It is always preferable to have a Democrat in a seat of power who will either not be as bad but still do bad shit, or not do anything, than a Republican in power who will overtly make your life worse and be happy doing it. It's a shit situation. We live in, as leftists, an abusive relationship with the Democratic Party because they very well understand that we have nowhere else to go in the electoral framework. They understand that. We have to break out of it. But unfortunately, we can't just break up with the Democratic Party because the analogy that I'm using here breaks down. Well, I guess actually, no, there's implicit threats in a lot of bad relationships and abusive relationships where people can't leave either. They can't just simply forehead leave. So maybe it's not the worst analogy. So we have to overtake them. All right, back to this.